Hey everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make an open and closed Eyeblossom flower from Minecraft, the 3D version that has moving pieces to allow it to be both open and closed. So this is what the finished project looks like. This is the closed version right now, but the petals do open up. There we go. The petals do open so that you can have both, all 4 petals open, and then they stick back up like that. If you are interested in making this flower, then let's get into the video. I do just want to preface this and say that I made the plan for this flower when it originally came out, which I want to say was like a year ago. So this has been literal months in the making, just because of making the plan, getting the blocks, finding time to make this craft, in addition to everything else going on in my life. So I wish that I had gotten this out when the Eyeblossom and Pale Garden update for Minecraft was relevant. Now we have like new things coming out again, but anyways, you know, better late than never, right? So without further ado, let's get into this video. Before I started this project, I needed a proof of concept. So before you ask what this tape wooden block monstrosity is, it is my proof of concept because this is far beyond anything I've ever made before and I'm not an engineer. So we have some moving pieces and this one will move like this way, but I think it's actually gonna work. So now that I have my little taped proof of concept here, and it'll open like that. Oh, I think it'll be perfect. Okay, now I've actually taped more of the pieces together. So 2 of the petals are going to be this monstrosity of a shape, and then the other 2 petals are going to be this shape. And oh goodness. And that just makes it so that all of the pieces will fit together, kind of like a puzzle. There won't be any gaps into the center. And then this is kind of what like half of the center of the flower will look like. So these 2 blocks, there will be 2 more on the side and this side. And then all the petals will kind of curl over top of it, because I did buy some itty bitty little hinges in order to make my vision come true. So I have all of these blocks laid out and I've taped them together so that I don't glue them wrong, because this is a lot of, like I said, moving pieces, moving blocks. So I wanted proof of concept, and now I have the actual 3D shape built because my diagrams are not necessarily the easiest to read. I found that the best way to glue these blocks together is to either glue them all into a straight line and then glue 2 lines together, or to make squares. So that's kind of what I'm doing to make these odd shaped petals. I'm just going with usually groups of 2 and then building onto it. So you can see that I line up the bricks the way, I guess blocks, the way that I want them to be, and then I glue them together. And this helps me make sure that the shape is consistent. And then also doing this on a flat surface like a table ensures that at least one side of the blocks will be completely flat and level, which helps when gluing the blocks together. I mentioned this a couple times probably throughout the video, but if the blocks were all the same size, it would be easier and there would be no random gaps or ridges, but that's just not the nature of these blocks from Amazon. So for the pot, these are the the 6 shapes you're gonna make. So these are the 2 wider sides. You've noticed that I have broken them up into 2 pieces each, and that's because the top soil piece is this kind of awkward shape, and it's so that it will like slot into place here, and then this top piece will go over top, and that's just to help with a little bit of structural support. This is the base here, 12 by 12, and then the other 2 sides are 4 by 6. These ones are 6 by 6. And the reason that this is a 6 by 6 pot is because the stem is 2 by 2. Every other flower that I've made, the stem is just 1 by 1. So we've done a 5 by 5 pot, but this time it's 2 by 2. So these are the shapes you're gonna make for the pot. And then each leaf is 5 blocks in 2 different shapes. So I will go ahead and do those as well. The shape of the one leaf is like this, and then the shape of the other leaf is essentially just a zigzag, kind of like that. So we'll make all the leaves, glue all of this together, and then we'll come back probably in another day to finish gluing all of the rest of the shapes together, and then it's on to priming. So we're gluing the leaves and the pot the same way that we glued the petals of the flower, starting by laying them all out in the orientation that they need to be glued in, and then starting with just 2 blocks and growing either by just joining 2 blocks and 2 blocks or making a line or a square. depending on the shape of the object that you're making. Obviously it will make sense one way or the other to do it. With the walls of the pots, it's easiest to turn them into lines and then glue the lines together. But if you're doing something that's in a regular shape like the leaves, it doesn't really matter because it's a weird shape. Once I finished gluing the last side of the pot together, I also glued together the long part of the stem, which is 9 blocks tall. And like I said, it's a 2x2 square. So you're going to make 4 long lines of 9 blocks and then glue 2 of them together on one side, 2 of them together on the other side, and then you will have a 2x2 square once you glue the sides together. Okay, so we're on day 2 now. I glued all of these together last night. Sorry, I have hiccups. So now I'm gonna finish, oh my goodness, gluing together some of these things. So this is like the top of the flower and this is the stem, right? So those will need to be glued together once the hinges are put on. And then I have to finish gluing together the petals, and then I can take apart my tape monstrosities and glue these pieces together as well. I wanted to keep the tape models together until these pieces were finished so that I didn't accidentally mess it up. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish gluing and then take apart the tape. So this is like a multi-day gluing process for a project of this size. Okay, this is kind of a weird angle, but I figured it was easiest to show you how the pieces are meant to go together. So now that we have the center, I did try and glue it to the rest of the stem, but as you can see, there's a gap here from where the nails in the hinges go. So we'll have to figure something else out. But anyways, these hinges, this is the bottom, this is the top, this is the center of the Eyeblossom flower, and then these are all of our petals. So you can see that, oh my goodness, everything's falling over. 2 of them are the same, and then these 2 are the same, and they're gonna go on opposite sides. So the reason I have these hinges is so that it can actually move, right? So these hinges will attach to the bottom of this one, and that will allow this piece to hinge like this, open and closed. So the 2 pieces that are the same are gonna go opposite each other. So they're gonna attach like this, and then they'll meet in the center. And we'll do the same thing with the other 2 pieces that are the same. They will go on the other side and meet in the center so that everything, it makes like a circle. If the blocks were perfectly square, then there wouldn't be any gaps or anything, but it's close enough. There's only like a little gap here that doesn't really matter. And then as you can see where the hinges are gonna go on the bottom. So then this will be at the top of the stem. I have the leaves here, and then the pot is also pretty much ready to go. So now we just need to attach all of the petals to the hinges. I'm worried it's gonna break when I try and attach the hinges to these pieces, but we'll hope for the best. We'll just go one piece at a time, and then it's gonna be able to like open up like this so that you can expose the Eyeblossom flower inside. Okay, so I got the petals glued to the hinges in the correct orientation, and now I'm just leaving it to dry, and fingers crossed everything holds. I've had to use a little bit more glue than anticipated in some of these spots. So now I just have like little supports holding it up, and hopefully when it's all done drying, it doesn't just immediately break apart. So we'll come back when this is done. Now that everything has been glued together, I'm actually just gonna put a couple nails into the flower petal side of things because this is like a little wobbly and I don't necessarily trust it to not just, you know, fall apart as soon as we start moving the pieces. So I'm gonna throw in a couple nails, assuming it works, and then we'll be back again. Okay, so now that the stem is glued on pretty crudely to the actual bulb of the flower, you can see that I did have to use hot glue just because of the difference between where the bottom of the flower is and where the stem would fit because of the hinges. It is on there pretty securely, and it's time to assemble the rest of the flower. I've been putting this off because I've kind of been dreading it. I don't really know why, but I have been. So I think the first order of business is going to be assembling the rest of the pot. Now you may remember why we did this shape, and it was so that this piece here is stronger in the center. So it's actually a pretty snug fit. I probably wouldn't even have to glue it if I didn't want to, but of course I'm going to. I'm going to glue this piece in first before I glue the flower to the top here. And then these pieces are meant to go on the side like that. And that just keeps everything a little bit more secure. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then I think I'll leave the leaves until after the rest of it is glued. I didn't explain this, but I do stack up a couple blocks in the center, and that's just to make sure that there's no structural problems when placing the heavy flower on top. Okay, the pot is fully assembled now. And as you can see, all of the petals still open properly. I'm going to add a couple singular blocks into the soil to make it less flat. And then I will add the leaves. This is probably the worst possible angle I could film this at, but what we're gonna do now is attach the leaves. So this leaf is gonna go here, this one is gonna go here, and then we will rotate and do the exact same thing. So this one here and this one up there. Now I will have to put in some support blocks in the bottom here just so that when we put these on, they're not just going to fall into the abyss. Okay, the leaves are in place with their temporary blocks. And as soon as those are dried and I can remove the temporary blocks, I will add the last of the individual little dirt pieces. I added one and then I was like, ooh, maybe actually I should stop before I get too carried away. So anyways, this is what it looks like for now. I will come back in however many hours it takes for this to dry, probably like a whole day. And we will keep going with the last little pieces to glue in before we do the primer. Ignoring all the clutter on my desk, we have finally finished all 2 coats of the primer for the Eyeblossom flower. This is the picture that I'm going off of for which colors need to go where. I've picked out my paints, my dirty palette that I use every single time, and I've just slowly been peeling the paint off and never cleaning. In terms of painting, I didn't really know where was the best spot to start at, so I decided I'd start with the top and do the center of the flower first. Plus it was the only place that used these colors, so I figured if I mixed them first, then it didn't really matter if the paint dried out while painting the other parts. So I started with a yellow and an orange, and then I quickly moved into the varying shades of gray. I can't remember exactly how many shades of gray I used for the stem and leaves, but there was at least 3 or 4. For the petals, there's 3 different shades of gray, and then for the pot, there is 4 different shades of brown. But right now we are on the stem and leaves, so I just went ahead and I started with one of the darker of the colors and following the pattern on the images of the Eyeblossom flower from Google that I have like pulled into Procreate, as you can kind of see off to the side there. Don't worry about the numbers on the screen, that is different than what I actually ended up following for the petals and the number of blocks. So as you can see, I'm just going brick by brick essentially and painting in the different colors. This is a darker shade than the first color, and I'm just repeating the same pattern on every side of the stem. So because there's 4 sides to the stem, the pattern is repeated 4 separate times. And by the time you get all the way around all 4 sides, the first side that you started with is dry, so you can just go ahead and do a second coat. I found that it took 2 coats with the acrylic paint that I was using, which is just like the cheap stuff from the dollar store. But that's also why it dries really quickly. That's just the beauty of acrylic paint. After the stem was mostly completed, I moved on to the leaves. The leaves, same pattern on the 2 that are the same shape, and then the same pattern on the 2 that are the other shape. I also, before I painted the leaves, painted the soil an almost black dark brown color, which is much darker than the other 2 flowers that I've made so far, but this is kind of like a gothic vibe flower, so I wanted everything very dark. Obviously it doesn't look like that when we get to the painting of the pot here, So I mixed up my colors and started painting. You can see off to the left side there that I've pulled out my cornflower, which is the first one that I made, and that's what I'm using to do the pot, or make sure that I have like the right pattern. It is lighter in the top left corner and darker in the bottom right corner. So I was just trying to mix up approximate similar shades and then follow a similar pattern, because this side of the pot is 6 blocks instead of 5 blocks. I did have to get a little bit creative with where I was putting the colors, but basically I just expanded the leftmost row and just doubled it. We realized here that with doing the second color, that it was almost the same as the first color. So I made it darker, a little bit more red, because the pots in the game are like a terracotta, so they are more orangey red than straight brown, and that's how this pot started. As you can see, I just continue to go side by side, filling in the same squares, following the pattern all the way around, and then I painted over all of it. I attempted to add all the colors to the one side, and then I really didn't like the way that it was looking, so I decided to completely start over and paint the entire pot brown. It was just taking a lot of coats, it was really messy, and I figured that it would probably be easier if I just started with a layer of brown and then went ahead with adding the darker colors over top of that. So I mixed up a light-ish brown color and did 2 coats of that over the entire thing. Then I made the darkest brown and started painting square by square. So you can see here that I'm using a pretty small square brush. It's actually the same square brush that I've been using for this entire thing. And I just go ahead and I paint in the squares, starting with the darkest color and then going through the other 2 slightly lighter shades. Here we are, the second darkest color, and I'm just going around the entire pot, like I said before, following the same pattern on each side. This time, because I've already done the lighter color as like a base coat, I'm trying to keep my lines less messy than when I was just doing like a first base coat, because I really only want to paint 1 coat of this. I think I do end up doing 2 for some of the more darker colors, just because it looks a little bit streaky with the lighter color underneath. And now we've moved into the third color, which is the second lightest, if that makes sense. And just going around each side. Don't forget to do the top edge of the pot as well. In every other flower that I've done, I've also done the inside rim of the pot. This time I chose not to do that because it was really hard to get my paintbrush in there to even do the soil and the like white primer, so I decided against that this time around. Maybe painting some of the bricks first before assembling would have alleviated this problem, but I decided that afterwards. So once the pot was all finished, then it was time to do the petals. I don't have a whole lot of footage of me painting the petals, but like I said before, I used 3 different colors, a light, medium, and darker shade of gray, and then I just followed my diagram as to where each color went. So each flower petal got almost the same treatment, so the parts of the petal that are closest to the stem, and then the topmost part of the petal. This is like super hard to explain over voiceover, but anyways, those are the lightest, and then the darker shades are on the bottom, and that's where the dark and medium gray comes in. There's also a medium gray like stripe in the center of the petal, which is more obvious once you close the petal together. But anyways, that is basically how I painted this whole thing, and I think the order worked out.
And with that, the 3D Eyeblossom flower is complete. I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. It is a little bit janky looking in some places, but overall, I think, you know, I executed the vision. Let me just kind of adjust the view here so that you can see a different angle. Like, we're not going to talk about how the petals are not evenly drooping, I guess. But I really like how the painting came out, the actual like sculpture itself, and then of course the petals do fold upwards. I'm going to take some pictures of them down just in case some of the paint scratches, and then I will come back and I will show you what it looks like with all the petals up.
Right before filming the closing of this, one of the petals decided to break a little bit. So anyways, here is what it looks like closing the petals. The layers of paint makes it extra thick so they actually stay up once you close them. And then here is the 3D. This is after I fixed the broken petal. Yeah, I just needed a little bit of extra glue. So this is what it looks like closed versus the open eye blossom. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Mondays or Wednesdays, usually about twice a month. I hope you have a lovely week, and I will see you all in the next video.